My name is Kenneth, and at 63 years old, I never expected to be starting over. After 40 years as a construction foreman, building homes for countless families, I thought I knew what solid foundations looked like. 15 years divorced and living alone, I was excited when my son Travis invited me to dinner after months of silence. Things had been tense since he married Amanda, but I hoped this meant reconciliation. Then my neighbor Frank called during dinner. "Kenneth," he said urgently, "who is in your house right now?" My blood ran cold. Before we continue this story, where are you watching from today? If you are new here, please subscribe and hit that like button. The journey I am about to share changed everything I thought I knew about family and trust. Growing up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, I learned early that nothing worth having comes without hard work. My father worked in the steel mills until his back gave out, and I promised myself I would build something more lasting. Construction became my calling. I loved the feeling of creating something solid from nothing but raw materials and sweat. I met Diane when we were both 22. She was working as a secretary at the construction company, and I was just starting as an apprentice. Her smile caught me first, warm and genuine without pretense. Within a year, we were married in a simple ceremony, with just family and a few close friends. We bought a modest house in a working-class neighborhood, something I could fix up over the years. Travis was born 2 years later. The first time I held him, I felt a responsibility greater than any construction project. Here was something truly worth building a good life for my son. I worked longer hours, taking every overtime opportunity. By the time I was 30, I had worked my way up to foreman. The pay was better, but the hours were longer. Diane understood, or at least she said she did. Looking back, maybe those long hours were the first cracks in our foundation. I was so busy building security that I missed the small moments. Travis's first steps happened while I was finishing a project across town. His first home run in Little League came during a weekend I was called away for an emergency repair. Diane was there for it all, keeping a careful record in photo albums that still sit on my shelves. When Travis was 10, I made a conscious effort to be more present. We started fishing together every Sunday. Those quiet mornings on the lake became sacred to me. Travis was a curious kid, always asking how things worked. By 12, he could help me with basic repairs around the house. I taught him to respect tools, to measure twice and cut once, to take pride in craftsmanship. "Dad, how do you know when something is built right?" he asked me once, holding a level against the bookshelf we were building together. "When it stands the test of time, son," I told him. "Anyone can make something that looks good today. The real skill is building something that still stands straight 20 years from now." Travis was different from me in many ways. While I was always comfortable with physical labor, he showed an aptitude for academics. His teachers encouraged us to consider college, something no one in my family had ever done. Diane and I agreed that our son deserved every opportunity. We started a college fund, cutting back wherever we could. The distance began when Travis left for university. He studied computer science, a field I barely understood. When he tried explaining his projects, I nodded along, feeling increasingly out of my depth. I was proud, but also aware of a growing gap between us. Diane and I held on for another 10 years after Travis left for college. The empty house felt too quiet, and we realized we had grown in different directions. The divorce was amicable. There was no dramatic betrayal, just the slow erosion of connection. We divided 30 years of shared life, and I kept the house while she moved to Florida to be near her sister. We still exchange Christmas cards and occasional phone calls about Travis. For a few years after college, Travis would come home regularly. He took a job with a tech company in Pittsburgh, and we would meet for dinner every few weeks. He was climbing quickly in his career, making more money by 30 than I ever did at my peak. I was nothing but proud. Then he met Amanda at a charity gala 6 years ago. She came from the kind of family that attended charity galas. Her father was a real estate developer who built luxury communities, the kind my crews would never be hired to work on. Amanda was beautiful, educated at private schools and an exclusive university. When Travis brought her to meet me, she looked around my modest home with barely concealed disdain. "It has character," she said, running a finger along my worn but polished dining table. "Is this antique? Just old?" I answered honestly. "Built it myself about 25 years ago." "How resourceful," she replied with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. Their wedding 2 years later was an elaborate affair at her parents' country club. I wore my one good suit, the same one I had worn to Travis's college graduation. I felt out of place among Amanda's family friends, doctors, lawyers, and business executives who discussed vacations in places I could barely pronounce. Amanda's father cornered me during the reception. "Kenneth is it, Travis tells me you built houses." "Yes, sir, for 40 years. Retired just last year." He nodded dismissively. "Interesting. You know the area where you live is becoming quite valuable. If you ever consider selling, I know some investors who might make you a generous offer." I thanked him politely and moved away unsettled by the conversation. It was the first time I had considered that my simple neighborhood might be seen as an investment opportunity by people like him. After the wedding, Travis changed. His visits became less frequent, his calls shorter. When we did meet, he had new opinions about everything from politics to food that sounded suspiciously like Amanda's wealthy family. He began suggesting that my house was too much maintenance for someone my age, though I was only 60 and still in good health. "Dad, have you thought about one of those new adult communities?" he asked during one visit. "No yard work activities, people your own age." "I like my yard work," I told him, "and my neighbors are just fine." I noticed he began looking around my house differently, his eyes lingering on spaces as if measuring them. Once I caught him taking photos of my backyard. "Just showing Amanda how nice your garden looks," he explained quickly. Too quickly. The last few months before the dinner invitation were the most distant we had ever been. Travis canceled plans twice, citing work emergencies. When I called, he seemed distracted, often putting me on speakerphone, while I could hear Amanda's voice in the background. So when he called to invite me to dinner at their new house, a spacious home in an exclusive development, I was surprised and hopeful. Maybe he had realized the distance between us and wanted to bridge it. I accepted immediately. "Great," Travis said. "Friday at 7. And Dad, we have something important to discuss with you." Those words gave me hope. Perhaps they were going to announce a pregnancy. At 63, the idea of becoming a grandfather filled me with unexpected joy. I spent the next few days anticipating the dinner, allowing myself to imagine a new chapter in our relationship. That hope made what happened next all the more devastating. The day of the dinner arrived, and I took extra care with my appearance. I trimmed my beard neatly, ironed my best shirt, and even bought a new pair of slacks. At the liquor store, I splurged on an expensive bottle of red wine, something well beyond my usual budget. The clerk recommended it as impressive, which was exactly what I wanted. The drive to their neighborhood took nearly 45 minutes. As I turned into their development, the houses grew larger and more imposing. Each sat on a carefully landscaped lot, with luxury cars in circular driveways. Travis and Amanda's house was near the back, a large colonial with white columns and perfect symmetry. My old pickup truck looked conspicuously out of place as I parked behind Travis's BMW. Amanda opened the door before I could knock. She wore an elegant black dress and pearls, as if for a much more formal occasion than dinner with her father-in-law. "Kenneth," she said, her eyes immediately dropping to my shoes, then to the wine bottle in my hand. You made it. Come in. Thank you for having me, I said, handing her the wine. I brought this for dinner. She examined the label. Oh, thank you. We have already opened a Bordeaux to breathe, but we can save this for another time. The foyer opened to a grand staircase and gleaming hardwood floors. Everything looked immaculate and untouched, like a model home rather than a lived-in space. No personal photos adorned the walls, just abstract art that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Travis emerged from what appeared to be a home office cell phone in hand. He glanced up, nodded at me, then returned to his call. Yes, I understand the projections. Can we discuss this tomorrow? My father just arrived. He hung up and finally turned his attention to me. Dad, glad you could make it. He gave me a quick embrace, the kind shared between business associates rather than family. Sorry about that. Work never stops. No problem, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Your home is beautiful. Amanda has a great eye for design, Travis replied, though I noticed he looked uncomfortable in his own living room, as if he too were a guest. Amanda led us to a formal dining room where the table was already set with fine china and crystal glasses. Everything matched perfectly, unlike the mismatched dishes in my cabinet that told the story of 40 years of life. So, Dad, Travis began as Amanda poured wine, how have you been keeping busy since retirement? I told them about my garden, my volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity, and the fishing trips I still took with Frank, my neighbor. As I spoke, I noticed Travis checking his phone under the table while Amanda's eyes glazed over. Remember those fishing trips we used to take, Travis? I asked, trying to create some connection. I still use that lucky tackle box you painted when you were 10. Oh yeah, Travis muttered, barely looking up. Those were fun. Travis never mentioned he liked fishing, Amanda said with surprise. He always says outdoor activities are a waste of time. I looked at my son, suddenly feeling I was sitting across from a stranger. The boy who had loved the peaceful mornings on the lake, who had learned patience while waiting for fish to bite, was apparently gone. People change, I guess, Travis said with a shrug. I prefer golf now. Amanda's father got me into it. The conversation shifted to people I did not know, their neighbors, Amanda's family friends, colleagues from Travis's company. They discussed vacation plans to Europe, the private school options they were considering for children they didn't yet have, and renovations they wanted to make to their already perfect house. I felt increasingly invisible as the dinner progressed. When I tried to contribute to the conversation, Amanda would subtly redirect it back to their social circle. When I mentioned a news story I had followed, Travis quickly pointed out that my information was probably outdated. Dad still gets the physical newspaper, he told Amanda with a chuckle, as if this were some quaint eccentricity rather than a preference. How charming, she replied in that tone that suggested it was anything but. My grandfather was the same way. Of course, he refused to believe that the internet was going to last. I felt heat rising in my face, but forced a smile. The filet mignon on my plate, while perfectly cooked, tasted like nothing. I had lost my appetite. As Amanda served dessert, a store-bought cheesecake, despite Travis telling me she was an amazing baker, I realized that no important discussion had been initiated. Whatever news they had planned to share remained unspoken. I was just about to ask about it when my phone rang. I usually silence my phone during meals, but with age has come the awareness that unexpected calls might be important. I glanced at the screen and saw Frank's name. I should take this, I said apologetically. It's my neighbor. He wouldn't call unless it was important. Amanda's lips thinned with annoyance, but I stepped away from the table and answered. Kenneth? Frank's voice was urgent, concerned. Are you home right now? No, I'm at Travis's for dinner. Why? There was a pause. Then who's in your house? My stomach dropped. What do you mean? There are lights on in your living room and upstairs bedroom. I saw people moving around inside. I know your routine, you never leave lights on when you go out. Are you sure? My voice must have changed because Travis looked up from his phone. Positive. There's also a car I don't recognize in your driveway. A black sedan. My mind raced. I had been robbed once before, about 5 years ago. They had taken Diane's jewelry, including her grandmother's ring that I had kept for Travis to give to his future wife. He had never asked for it, and I had never offered after meeting Amanda. Call the police, Frank. I'm heading home now. I hung up and turned to Travis and Amanda. I'm sorry, but I need to leave. Frank says there's someone in my house. Travis frowned. Are you sure it's not just a misunderstanding? Maybe a reflection or something. He saw people moving inside and a strange car in my driveway. Amanda sighed dramatically. It's probably nothing. Your neighbor might be confused. Older people often are. Frank is 68, not 98, I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. And he was a security consultant before retirement. He knows what he's seeing. Travis stood reluctantly. Do you want me to come with you? The offer felt hollow, made without any real intention behind it. No, stay and enjoy your evening. I need to go now. Amanda didn't even stand as I gathered my coat. Such a shame to cut the evening short, she said, though her tone suggested the opposite. Travis walked me to the door. Let us know what happens, he said, already turning back toward the dining room. I drove home faster than was wise, my thoughts racing faster than my truck. Who could be in my house? The recent break-ins in the neighborhood had all happened when homes were empty for extended periods, vacations or hospital stays. No one would expect a house to be empty for just a dinner, unless they knew my plans. I pushed the thought away as paranoia. Traffic was light, but the 45-minute drive felt eternal. I called Frank back for an update. Police said they're sending someone, but they're short-staffed tonight, he reported. The lights are still on, and I've seen at least 2 people moving around. The car is still there. I'm about 20 minutes away, I told him. Keep watching if you can. I'm not going anywhere, Kenneth. Be careful when you arrive. I next tried calling the police directly. The dispatcher confirmed an officer would be sent, but couldn't say how soon. Don't enter the property if you suspect intruders are still present, she advised. It's my home, I said more sharply than intended. Sir, your safety is more important than property. Please wait for officers to arrive. I agreed verbally, but had already decided I wouldn't wait in my driveway if someone was ransacking my house. I had a baseball bat in my trunk, not much protection, but better than nothing. When I finally turned onto my street, I spotted Frank standing at the edge of his driveway, watching my house across the street. I pulled up beside him rather than into my own driveway, which was indeed occupied by a black sedan I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I took in the scene. Lights glowed from my living room windows and upstairs bedroom. Shadows moved inside. My home, the place that had been my sanctuary for decades, had been violated. That car, Frank said quietly as I approached. I think I've seen it before. I squinted at the vehicle. Something about it did seem vaguely familiar, but in the darkness it was hard to be certain. When, last week, driving slowly past your house, I thought they might be lost. The pieces weren't fitting together. Burglars don't usually case a house multiple times for a routine break-in, and they certainly don't turn on all the lights while they work. Any sign of the police? I asked. Frank shook his head. Not yet. I'm going in. I decided, retrieving the bat from my trunk. Kenneth, wait for the police. This could be over by then. I gripped the bat firmly. Stay here. If you hear anything concerning, call 911 again. I approached my house cautiously, staying in the shadows of the large oak trees that lined my front yard. As I got closer, I could hear voices inside, though I couldn't make out what they were saying. The front door, which I always locked even when taking out the trash, was closed, but not necessarily secured. My pulse hammered in my ears as I carefully climbed the 3 steps to my porch, avoiding the second one that always creaked. From this vantage point, I could see into my living room through the gap in the curtains. What I saw made my blood freeze in my veins. I stood paralyzed, bat gripped tightly in my trembling hands as I peered through my own living room window. Inside, moving freely through my house like they owned it, were Travis and Amanda. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Travis, whom I had left at his dining room table just 45 minutes ago, was now in my living room, opening drawers and rifling through my personal papers. Amanda was carefully examining items from a storage box that should have been in my attic keepsakes and mementos I had collected over decades. I must have made a sound, because Frank appeared silently beside me. "Is that?" he whispered, eyes widening. I nodded, unable to speak. We watched as Amanda held up an old pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather. "This might be worth something," she said, her voice faintly audible through the window. "It looks antique." "Put it with the other things we're taking," Travis replied, not looking up from my desk where he was sorting through my files. "This is taking too long," Amanda complained. "We should have done this weeks ago when we first made copies of his keys." My keys. I felt in my pocket where my house keys rested safely. They had made copies without my knowledge. "We had to be careful," Travis responded. "Dad's always home. This dinner was the perfect opportunity." "Well, your father certainly can ramble on. I thought he'd never stop with those boring fishing stories." I felt sick hearing them discuss me this way, as an obstacle and nuisance to be managed. "Did you find the deed yet?" Amanda asked, setting down my grandfather's watch. "Not yet, but I found his bank statements. Look at this, he's still got good savings, even with just his pension and Social Security." "Show me," Amanda said, moving to look over his shoulder. "That's more than I expected. This could work out even better than we planned. The assisted living place only needs a 30% deposit to hold a room. With power of attorney, we could manage the rest of his assets while the house sells." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Assisted living, power of attorney. Selling my house, my own son was planning to strip me of my independence, my home, my dignity, all behind my back. "Your father has no idea what this property is worth," Amanda continued, oblivious to being observed. "My dad says with the new development expanding this way, this lot alone could sell for triple what your dad thinks the whole property is worth." "He'll fight it," Travis said, sounding concerned for the first time. "You know how stubborn he is about this place." Amanda's laugh was cold. "That's why we need to get everything in place first. The papers for power of attorney just need his signature. One doctor's evaluation questioning his capacity to live alone, and we're set. My father already has a doctor friend who will help." "I don't know, Amanda. Tricking him like this. Do you want to be stuck taking care of him for the next 20 years? He could live to be 90, and then what? All your inheritance gone to nursing homes anyway, and this property devalued by then." She placed a hand on Travis's shoulder. "We're doing him a favor. That assisted living place is really nice, and he'll have people to talk to. He's lonely here." "I guess you're right," Travis conceded, returning to the papers. "Of course I am. Now where would he keep the deed to the house, and we still need to find that ring your mother left. You said it was valuable." "Dad always said it was meant for my wife," Travis said quietly. "Exactly. And what am I find it? My mother would love having a vintage piece like that. I had heard enough. My initial shock had hardened into something else, a cold, clear anger that steadied my shaking hands. I moved to the front door and turned the knob. It was unlocked, as I suspected. I pushed the door open and stepped into my own home, Frank right behind me. The familiar creak of the door announced our arrival. The voices in the living room abruptly ceased. I walked slowly into the living room, bat still in hand, though I had no intention of using it. The looks on their faces when they saw me standing there was something I will never forget. Travis went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Amanda froze, her hand still clutching my grandfather's watch. "Dad," Travis finally managed. How did you get home so quickly?" I finished for him, my voice steadier than I felt. "I broke a few speed limits. Funny thing about emergencies, they tend to motivate fast driving." Amanda recovered first, slipping the watch into her pocket when she thought I wasn't looking. "Kenneth, this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I said, looking pointedly at the scattered papers, the open boxes, the items sorted into piles. "Because it looks like my son and his wife broke into my house while I was at dinner." "We didn't break in," Travis protested weakly. "We have a key." "A key I never gave you," I corrected. "Frank, did you reach the police again?" Frank nodded. "They should be here any minute." "Police?" Amanda's composed facade cracked. "That's not necessary. This is a family matter." "Is it?" I walked further into the room, taking stock of what they had disturbed. Family doesn't plot to declare me incompetent. Family doesn't make plans to sell my home out from under me. Family doesn't discuss my bank accounts like they've already inherited them. Travis paled further. "You heard everything," I confirmed. "The dinner was just a distraction, wasn't it? Get the old man out of the house so you can search for his papers and valuables." "Dad, we were just looking for old photos." Travis tried the lie, sounding hollow even to him. "Stop lying, Travis. I raised you better than that." The disappointment in my voice seemed to hit him harder than anger would have. He actually flinched. "Kenneth." Amanda stepped forward, her tone shifting to something saccharine. "You're misunderstanding. We're concerned about you living alone at your age. We've been researching some lovely communities where I'm 63, Amanda not 93. I'm in perfect health, my mind is sharp, and I have no trouble maintaining my home." I turned back to Travis. "Was any of this your idea, or was it all hers and her father's?" Amanda's face hardened. "Don't try to turn this around on me. Travis agrees that this house is too much for you." "Is that true?" I asked my son directly. "You think I'm incapable of living in the home I've maintained for 40 years?" Travis couldn't meet my eyes. "Dad, we just want what's best for you." "No," I said quietly. "You want what's best for yourselves." "How much is her father offering for my property?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "That's what I thought." I pointed to the door. "Get out of my house, now." "Dad, please, let's talk about this. I think I've heard enough of your plans for my future." I picked up my grandfather's pocket watch from where Amanda had set it down. "And you can empty your pocket before you leave." Amanda glared but removed the watch she had slipped into her pocket earlier. "Travis, honey, this is ridiculous." Amanda tried one more time. "Your father is clearly overreacting. We can discuss this like adults." The sound of a police siren saved me from having to respond. Frank, who had been silently watching from the doorway, stepped outside to wave the officers in. "Dad," Travis began, but I cut him off. "Leave now, Travis. We'll discuss this when I'm less likely to say things I'll regret, even if they're true." 2 police officers entered, looking between us with professional caution. Frank quickly explained the situation, a neighbor reporting a break-in, only to discover it was the homeowner's son using a copied key without permission. "Sir, would you like to press charges?" one officer asked me. I looked at my son, saw the fear in his eyes at the possibility, and felt a deep sadness replace some of the anger. "No," I said finally, "but I want them to leave immediately, and I want my keys back." Travis fumbled in his pocket and placed my house keys on the coffee table. The keys I had once hoped to give him permanently someday, with an invitation to consider this his home always. The officers escorted Travis and Amanda out. I watched from my porch as they got into the black sedan, a car I now recognized as one Travis had recently purchased. They drove away without looking back. Frank stayed with me after the police left, making coffee while I sat heavily in my recliner, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal. "I never would have believed it," Frank said, handing me a steaming mug. "Your own son." "Neither would I," I replied, the full weight of the evening finally crashing down on me. "Neither would I." I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying their conversation in my mind, looking for any possible interpretation other than the obvious one. There was none. My son, the boy I had raised, sacrificed for loved unconditionally, had been planning to declare me incompetent and take control of my assets. The depth of the betrayal was almost impossible to comprehend. Not just the financial aspects, though those were shocking enough. It was the casual way they had discussed my life, as if my desires and independence meant nothing. As if 40 years of hard work entitled them to decide my future. As dawn broke, I made myself another cup of coffee and faced the harsh reality I needed to protect myself from my own son. The morning after discovering Travis and Amanda in my home, I felt like I had aged a decade overnight. My body ached from tension, and a headache pounded behind my eyes from lack of sleep. But beneath the physical discomfort burned a steady resolve. I would not be a victim, not of strangers, and certainly not of my own flesh and blood. My first call was to my bank. I explained that I needed to secure my accounts immediately and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Next, I called Harold Winters, an attorney who had worked construction with me decades ago before going to law school at night. We had remained casual friends over the years, meeting occasionally for coffee or a beer. "Kenneth," Harold said when I explained the situation, "this is more common than you'd think. Children get impatient for their inheritance, especially when property values increase." "Can they actually do it?" I asked. "Get power of attorney or whatever they were planning. Not without your consent or a court finding you incompetent," Harold assured me. "And based on our conversation, you sound perfectly competent to me. But we should meet soon to put some protections in place." Before hanging up, he added, "And Kenneth, change your locks today." Frank insisted on driving me to the hardware store, concerned about my lack of sleep. We purchased new deadbolts for all exterior doors. While there, I also invested in a basic security system with door sensors and cameras, something I had considered for years, but never prioritized. My brother-in-law had a similar problem, the locksmith told me as he installed the new deadbolts that afternoon. His son-in-law tried taking over his finances. "These new locks have better pins, impossible to copy, without the security card, which only you will have." I thanked him, oddly comforted that my situation wasn't unique, though that made it no less painful. At the bank, I removed Travis as my contingent beneficiary and account cosigner, a precaution I had taken years ago in case something happened to me. The bank representative helped me set up new accounts with enhanced security features and suggested I check my credit report for any unauthorized activities. "Have you considered a safe deposit box for valuable documents and items?" she asked. "It's more secure than keeping them at home." By evening, I had installed a small fireproof safe in my bedroom closet, hidden behind hanging clothes. Inside, I placed my grandfather's pocket watch, Diane's ring, and important documents, including my deed and will. The safe wasn't impenetrable, but it would prevent casual access like what had occurred the previous night. As I prepared for bed, exhausted from the day's activities, my phone rang. Travis's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again, and again. On the fourth call, I finally answered. "Dad?" Travis's voice sounded desperate. "Please don't hang up." "I'm listening," I said coldly. "About last night, it wasn't what it looked like." "Then what was it, Travis? 'Cause it looked like you and Amanda were searching my house for valuables and documents while I was conveniently at your dinner table." "We were just concerned about you," he insisted. "Living alone, getting older." "Stop." My voice was firm. "I heard your conversation with Amanda. Every word of it. About the assisted living deposit. About her father wanting my property. About finding a doctor to question my competence." The silence that followed told me he had no prepared explanation for this. "Travis, I raised you to be honest. At least do me the courtesy of not lying now." "Dad, His voice cracked. "It got out of control. Amanda and her father kept talking about how your neighborhood was changing, how your house was worth so much more than you realized. It started as just conversations about maybe helping you downsize eventually, but then you decided to take matters into your own hands, without talking to me. Amanda said you'd never agree, that you'd be stubborn about it. So you planned to force me." The pain in my chest had nothing to do with my physical health. "Your own father. I'm sorry, Dad. I got caught up in it all. The money, the plans. I wasn't thinking clearly." "No, you weren't." I took a deep breath. "Travis, I've changed my locks and secured my accounts. I'm meeting with an attorney tomorrow. I don't want to see or speak to you or Amanda for a while. Dad, please. I need time, son. What you were planning to do, it's not something I can just forgive over a phone call." I hung up my hand, shaking. The phone immediately rang again, but I turned it off. I needed sleep more than I needed his excuses. The next morning brought 3 more calls, these from numbers I didn't recognize. I answered the third, only to hear the smooth, professional voice of Amanda's father. "Kenneth, I hope I'm not disturbing you. This is Richard Blackwell, Amanda's father." "I know who you are," I replied. "I understand there was some misunderstanding last night." His tone was that of someone accustomed to smoothing over problems with money and influence. "Travis and Amanda were simply concerned about your well-being. By copying my keys without permission and searching my house for valuables. That's an interesting form of concern." He cleared his throat. "Perhaps their approach was misguided, but their intentions were good. The assisted living community they found for you is truly exceptional. I have clients who pay top dollar to live there." "Mr. Blackwell," I interrupted, "let me be clear. I have no intention of moving from my home. I have no interest in selling my property to you or your investors. And if you or your daughter come near my house again, I will file for a restraining order." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his tone had hardened. "I see. Well, that's certainly your prerogative. But Kenneth, do consider that at your age, maintaining a property becomes increasingly difficult. Medical emergencies happen. The offer remains open should you reconsider." The implied threat wasn't lost on me. "Goodbye, Mr. Blackwell." The meeting with Harold that afternoon was productive but sobering. We updated my will, removing Travis completely, a decision that pained me deeply but felt necessary. We drafted a living will and healthcare directive naming Frank as my healthcare proxy instead of Travis. We also discussed filing for a protective order, though Harold suggested waiting to see if the situation escalated further. "What about what Amanda said about finding a doctor to question my competence?" I asked. Harold frowned. "That's more difficult to prevent directly. But we can document your current mental state. I'll arrange for a geriatric evaluation with a reputable doctor, establish a baseline of your cognitive health now, while there's no question about it." When I returned home, I found a bouquet of flowers on my porch with a card from Travis. "Dad, please call me. We need to talk." I brought the flowers inside but didn't call. Over the next week, I threw myself into securing not just my home but my future. The locksmith returned to install window sensors. I scheduled a full physical and cognitive assessment with my doctor, who was outraged when I explained why. "I've been your physician for 20 years, Dr. Roberts said firmly. "If anyone questions your capacity, they'll have to go through me first." I also began my own investigation into Travis's finances. This felt like an invasion of privacy, but after what he had planned for me, it seemed necessary. Harold helped me access public records, and what we found was illuminating. Travis and Amanda had purchased their home with a minimal down payment and carried a massive mortgage. They had 3 luxury cars between them, all leased. Credit card statements showed expensive restaurants, designer clothes, and lavish vacations. Most concerning, Travis had recently taken a large loan against his 401k. "They're living well beyond their means," Harold concluded. "This explains the urgency to access your assets." A deeper search revealed something even more troubling. Amanda's father's real estate company was struggling. Several of his luxury developments had failed to sell as expected, and he was facing a lawsuit from investors. The generous offer he might have made for my property would likely have been well below market value, a desperate attempt to acquire land cheaply for future development. Armed with this knowledge, I felt more justified in my actions, but no less heartbroken. My son had fallen into a lifestyle he couldn't afford, influenced by people who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their financial goals. 2 weeks after the incident, Travis appeared unannounced at my door. The security camera alerted me to his presence before he could knock. I considered not answering, but ultimately decided a face-to-face conversation was inevitable. When I opened the door, I barely recognized my son. His usual polished appearance was disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he had lost weight. "Dad," he said simply, his voice rough. "Please, 5 minutes." I stepped back, allowing him inside but leading him only as far as the kitchen. The living room, with its comfortable seating that invited lengthy conversations, felt too intimate for this discussion. Travis noticed the security camera in the corner, the new locks, the paper taped over the spare key I used to keep hidden on the porch. His shoulders slumped further. "You've been busy," he commented quietly. "Protecting myself," I corrected. "What do you want, Travis?" He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. "Amanda left me." This wasn't what I had expected. "When? 3 days ago, after you changed the locks and her father realized you weren't going to sell." He stared at his hands. "She said I failed, that I should have been more persuasive with you." I felt a complex mixture of emotions, satisfaction that their plan had collapsed, concern for my son's obvious distress, and still simmering anger at his betrayal. "I'm sorry your marriage is struggling," I said finally, "but that doesn't change what you were planning to do to me." "I know." Travis looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Dad, I got lost. The lifestyle, the pressure from Amanda and her family. I became someone I don't recognize anymore. Someone I hate. You were going to have me declared incompetent, Travis. Your own father." "I know." Tears welled in his eyes. "I've thought about nothing else since that night. How could I have even considered it?" What kind of son does that make me? That's what I've been asking myself, I admitted. I kept thinking about all those Sundays teaching you to fish, to build things, to be honest and work hard. Where did that boy go? Travis wiped his eyes. I think he got seduced by things that seemed important but weren't. Status, money, impressing people who were never going to be impressed. He took a shaky breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Dad. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I'm seeing things clearly now. Too late probably, but clearly. I studied my son looking for signs of manipulation or deceit. I found none, only genuine regret and shame. Still, trust once broken is not easily restored. What happens now? I asked. With you and Amanda. She's staying with her parents while we figure things out, he said bitterly. But there's nothing to figure out. It's over. I've already spoken to a divorce attorney. And your finances? He looked surprised that I knew about his financial situation, but answered honestly. A mess. The house is underwater with the mortgage. We've been living on credit for years. I'll probably have to file for bankruptcy. Where will you live? I don't know yet. Maybe a small apartment near work. I've been staying in a hotel. I nodded, processing this information. Part of me, the hurt, angry part, felt he deserved this downfall. But the father in me ached seeing my child in such distress, even as I remained wary of his intentions. Travis, I said finally, I need time. What you planned to do violated my trust in the most fundamental way. I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I understand, he said, standing to leave. I just wanted to tell you face to face that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Whatever happens with me and Amanda, with my finances, with everything else, knowing I betrayed you, is the worst part of all of this. As he walked to the door, he stopped and turned back. The boy you taught to fish and build things. He's still in here somewhere, Dad. I just need to find him again. After he left, I sat alone in my kitchen for a long time, turning our conversation over in my mind. I wasn't ready to forgive, wasn't sure I ever would be completely. But for the first time since that terrible night, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that someday some form of relationship with my son might be salvageable. That night, I called Frank and asked if he could come over for coffee the next morning. As I began to rebuild my sense of security, I realized that strengthening other relationships with friends, neighbors, my community would be an essential part of moving forward. 1 month after discovering Travis and Amanda's betrayal, my life had transformed in ways both painful and surprisingly positive. The initial shock and hurt remained, but alongside them grew a new sense of purpose and self-reliance. The legal protections Harold helped me establish gave me peace of mind. My updated will now designated charities and a small trust for Travis that would only activate if he completed financial counseling. My medical directives were clear, with Frank named as my healthcare proxy. A security system with cameras monitored my property, sending alerts to my phone if anything unusual was detected. These practical steps were important, but the emotional journey proved more challenging and ultimately more rewarding. After years of focusing primarily on Travis and our relationship, I reconnected with old friends from my construction days. We began meeting weekly for breakfast at a local diner, sharing stories and current concerns with the easy camaraderie of men who had worked alongside each other for decades. "Should have been doing this all along," remarked Joe, my former assistant foreman, during one gathering. "Getting old doesn't mean getting lonely." Frank and his wife Maria became regular dinner guests at my home. Maria, an excellent cook, insisted on teaching me recipes so you don't live on sandwiches and canned soup. Those evenings around my dining table, filled with good food and conversation, helped heal something in me that had been broken even before Travis's betrayal. I also found unexpected purpose in physical work again. I began renovating my house not to sell it, but to make it truly mine in a way it hadn't been since Diane left. I repainted every room, refinished the hardwood floors, and built new kitchen cabinets with my own hands. The familiar rhythm of measuring, cutting, and assembling calmed my mind and reinforced my capability. "You're not just fixing up a house," Frank observed one day as he helped me install new bathroom fixtures. "You're rebuilding yourself." He wasn't wrong. Each improvement to my home became a statement: I am here. I am capable. I am not done yet. Travis attempted contact several times during that month. I received text messages apologizing again, updating me on his situation. He had found a small apartment and was selling his luxury car and asking if we could talk. I responded briefly, but maintained distance, not yet ready for reconciliation. Then came a certified letter from Travis that changed everything. Unlike his brief texts, this was a 4-page handwritten letter detailing not just apologies, but a thorough accounting of his actions and thought processes that had led to that night. He explained how gradually he had been influenced by Amanda's family's values, how the pressure of maintaining appearances had driven him into debt, and how he had begun to see me through their eyes as an asset rather than a person, a father. "I have no excuse," he wrote toward the end. "I betrayed not just you, but everything you taught me about honesty, hard work, and respect. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm working every day to become the son you deserve, whether or not I ever earn back your trust." The letter included no requests, no attempts to arrange a meeting, no self-pity, just raw honesty and accountability. I read it 3 times that night and again the next morning. Something in his words rang true, in a way his tearful apologies at my kitchen table hadn't quite managed. I called Harold to discuss the letter and my feelings about it. Always practical, he suggested a neutral meeting place if I decided to see Travis again. "People can change," Harold said, "but verify, don't just trust. Actions speak louder than words, even eloquent ones." After careful consideration, I texted Travis suggesting we meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. His response was immediate and grateful. The Travis who arrived at that meeting looked different from both the polished, distant son who had hosted me for dinner and the disheveled, desperate man who had appeared at my door after Amanda left. He was clean and presentable, but simpler somehow, wearing jeans and a plain button-down rather than designer clothes, driving an older sedan rather than a luxury car. We talked for nearly 3 hours. He shared more details about his divorce proceedings, his financial reorganization under Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and his decision to switch to a less prestigious but more fulfilling position within his company that allowed him to actually build software rather than just manage projects. "I'm earning less," he said, "but I sleep better. I'm creating something again, like you taught me." I shared details about my home renovations, my renewed friendships, and the security measures I'd implemented, a gentle reminder that while we were talking, trust remained an issue. The conversation wasn't easy. There were uncomfortable silences, moments of barely suppressed anger, and painful acknowledgments of how far our relationship had deteriorated. But by the end, we had established a tentative path forward, occasional brief meetings in public places. No financial discussions, no expectations. 6 months after that terrible night, my life had found a new rhythm. The renovation of my house was complete, transforming it into a space that reflected my personality and needs rather than just the accumulation of decades. I had installed energy-efficient Windows solar panels and a small workshop in what had been an unused bedroom. I had also found a new purpose that brought unexpected joy. Through a conversation with Harold, I learned that a local community center needed volunteers to teach basic carpentry to at-risk youth. Twice weekly, I showed teenagers how to use tools safely measure accurately, and create something with their hands. "You've got patience," the program coordinator told me after observing one session. "These kids can tell you actually care if they learn." I thought about the Sundays I had spent teaching Travis similar skills, how those quiet moments of focused work had created space for meaningful conversations about life choices and values. Perhaps some of these young people would remember these lessons the way Travis once had before he temporarily lost his way. My relationship with Travis had evolved into something new, not the easy closeness we once shared, but not the painful estrangement of the immediate aftermath either. We met monthly for lunch, keeping our conversations light at first, then gradually deeper as small measures of trust were rebuilt. During one such lunch, Travis shared news that surprised me. "I've been volunteering at a financial literacy program for young adults," he said, "teaching basics about budgeting, credit, saving, all the things I failed at so spectacularly." "That's good work," I replied, genuinely impressed. "How did that start?" "Part of my bankruptcy counseling, actually. The counselor mentioned they needed volunteers who understood firsthand how easy it is to spiral into debt." He smiled ruefully. "Turns out my mistakes make me a credible teacher." I nodded, understanding completely. Sometimes we teach best what we most needed to learn. Our conversation turned to my renovation projects and his new apartment, which he had furnished simply with second-hand pieces. He was gradually refinishing a skill he remembered from our projects together. As we prepared to leave, Travis hesitated, then asked, "Dad, do you think, would you want to go fishing sometime like we used to?" The question touched something deep within me, a memory of peaceful mornings on the lake, the simple joy of sitting quietly together, the lessons that couldn't be taught with words alone. "I'd like that," I said. "Maybe next month when the weather's better." On the drive home, I reflected on the strange, painful journey of the past 6 months. I had lost the illusion of having a perfect father-son relationship, but perhaps gained something more authentic in its place. I had discovered resilience. I didn't know I possessed, built a richer community than I had before, and found new purpose that extended beyond family ties. I had also made practical decisions that secured my future on my own terms. I sold a portion of my property, the undeveloped back acre, to a neighbor who wanted to expand their garden, using the proceeds to establish a retirement fund that would ensure I could maintain my independence. This decision was made thoughtfully on my timeline for my benefit. Everything the plan Travis and Amanda had concocted was not. The peace I had found wasn't about forgetting or even fully forgiving the betrayal. It came from standing up for myself, setting clear boundaries, and rebuilding my life with intention rather than passivity. It came from recognizing that while Travis would always be my son, my identity and worth extended far beyond being his father. That evening, as I sat on my renovated back porch watching the sunset, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The painful awakening I experienced that night, rushing home to find my son and his wife rifling through my possessions, had ultimately led to a greater sense of self and purpose than I had known in years. The foundation I now stood upon was stronger for having been tested. The relationships I valued were more authentic for being chosen rather than assumed. And the future, while uncertain as it always is, felt like something to embrace rather than fear. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Frank hadn't called me that night, if Travis and Amanda's plan had proceeded unchallenged. Would they have succeeded in their manipulation? Would I have found myself stripped of my independence, my home, my dignity, all under the guise of what's best for you? I'm thankful I'll never know. Instead, I learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to rebuild what's broken, to find new purpose and connection. Sometimes the greatest act of love, both for others and for yourself, is setting clear boundaries and expecting better. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild after that trust was broken? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Your support helps me continue sharing these life experiences that remind us all of our capacity for resilience and growth, no matter our age or circumstances. Thank you for listening, and remember, true dignity comes not from what happens to us, but how we choose to respond.